the books with the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr. So with those invitations will be going out soon, so stay tuned for that. We should have a ton for this year. Before we get started, I want to thank two terrific sponsors that we have, T1 Energy and Lockheed Martin. Thank you very much for making the event possible. So we also appreciate, we have some other partners with us, including the Alpha Institute and CGCN. Thank you all as well for making this happen. I have a co-host today who I'm very thrilled to bring up. He is my partner in crime on the Breitbart Business Digest. Everyone go to Breitbart.com and subscribe right now. Our economic and finance editor, and I think the guy who knows MAGA economics better than anyone, our finance editor, John Carney.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, well, without any further delay, let's bring up the Honorable Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick.
Hey, guys. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here.
So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
All right, so of course, I had some opening questions all planned out, and then I woke up this morning and something spectacular has happened within our country. Jobs data is ridiculous. Blowout numbers, 130,000 new jobs versus 55,000 expected. Unemployment rates down, wages are going up, and our favorite at Breitbart News, the federal government lost 34,000 jobs. Pretty amazing stuff. This ties into so much of the agenda. But your reaction?
Well, the president is driving growth in America, right? I mean, you think about how you drive growth. You cut down your imports, right, by tariffing them. You drive your exports by opening all these foreign markets and driving their tariffs down, right? And those two things obviously drive economic growth. Then you bring $18 trillion. The president loves that number because it's monstrous. $18 trillion of domestic investment, all these factories being built here. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a manufacturing rebirth in America. You're going to get construction jobs blowing out the doors, and those are going to be followed by manufacturing jobs coming. So I think you're going to get the greatest growth the United States has ever seen. And if Kevin Warsh delivers and cuts rates, I think right now in the first quarter, my opinion is you're going to see 6% growth for the greatest economy in the world. You got to realize this is a $30 trillion economy growing 6%. So the fastest growth in the world. And it's not like it's easy out there, right? Last quarter, the UK grew 0.1%. Europe grew 0.4% and Japan shrank 0.6%. So it's like a tough world out there, and we're kicking tail. So basically, if you think about it, we were exporting our economy to the rest of the world by importing all their stuff, buying all their stuff and employing them. And what the president said is, we're not going to be the same as everyone else. We're not going to grow 2.1 and they grow 1.8 like we're all used to. We are going to be who we are. If we're the greatest economy in the world and the greatest country in the world, let's grow like we're the greatest economy in the world and the greatest country in the world. Let's take care of Americans. And that's what you're feeling. You're going to see it in GDP numbers. You're going to see it in employment numbers. You're going to see it in manufacturing numbers. You're going to see it relentlessly in 2026. You're going to feel it coming, and we are going to win.
I think Alex actually underplayed how good these jobs numbers were. The 130,000 is impressive, but it's 172,000 in the private sector. You guys are shrinking the government and people said, oh, that'll be a drag on GDP, that'll be a drag on employment. I don't see the drag.
Well, it's kind of funny, the whole GDP counting government. You know, I hire, like, think about it. If everybody left the auto industry and joined DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, they would say GDP is flat. You'd say, no, come on. If you work for DMV, you're not like producing. Right? But that's not the way GDP works. So our view is let's reduce the size of government. Let's get those people out into the real world, earning, producing, and growing. And our economy will actually be better. And that's what we're doing. So when I walked into the Department of Commerce, I had 52,000 people. And now I have 40,000 people. You could ask me, what do those 40,000 people? That's a lot of people. But what you learn in government is the people who work for the government are much better than you can imagine. But they are also very, very specific in their focus. So they're really experts at narrow. They're not like, when you start a business, you could be the chief cook and bottle washer. In government, you have a bottle washer and a cook, right? You just don't have people to do across the board. But they're great. My department's got tons of amazingly great people, but they're very, very narrow and very focused. And obviously what we want to do is we think technology can dramatically improve this. And I can talk about why there hasn't been technology put into the United States government since 1975. It might make you a little nauseous, but they changed the accounting rules in 1975, and so they stopped putting in new software. But with the advent of AI and this administration, our objective is to rip all the software out of the United States American government and put in new software so that the next administration has the right answer to run the government properly.
So you threw out a huge number there, 6% GDP growth. Give us the path to get there.
Well, as I said, if imports are down and exports are up, that means when imports are down, we're consuming our own stuff, right? And exports growing, right? We've smashed down tariffs across the world, so now our people have the ability to sell their goods overseas, right? So those two things together, and then you bring that in with construction. I mean, I went to a groundbreaking of a $100 billion mega fab to build high bandwidth memory in Syracuse, New York. Now, this will give you a good idea of how this works. Why would someone build a $100 billion semiconductor factory? This is not the data center. This is like literally making the chips that go in the data center. $100 billion factory, 40,000 construction jobs, 25,000 people going to work in that high-tech factory going forward, and these are technical jobs. Why would you build it in Syracuse? Syracuse, like the basketball team, we used to see when they were great, they'd play in the Carrier Dome, right? Because there was a big industrial complex, GE was there, Carrier was there, and they all left. But what didn't they leave? They left these hulking old factories that need to be torn down, but they had stranded power, right? If you think about all these communities, they had paper mills, they had steel factories, they had all this power that no one's now using. And what you're going to see is you're going to see the revitalization, the resurrection of all these communities because they built the power once upon a time, and that power is sitting there kind of cheap, like the Geico money. It's kind of staring at people saying, cheap power, cheap power. And you're going to see these communities come back to life. And it's beautiful, because let's face it, when we went and did a groundbreaking for a $100 billion factory in Syracuse, I don't think they'd seen anything. I think they'd only heard the sucking sound of everybody leaving. I don't think they ever saw the fact that there's going to be monstrous amount of trucks. And by the way, just for a little fun, what did we have to do as the Trump administration to get that factory built? Besides negotiating with Micron, besides changing the terms of the Biden administration CHIPS Act, which they had messed up completely, and all that kind of stuff, they had theoretically a bat, I'm not kidding, you can't make this stuff up, okay? A bat habitat in the trees in this forest. And I'm like, well, can you prove there's a bat habitat? No. Because I didn't know bats have habitats and live in the trees. So we attacked the science, which was, of course, bullshit. And then they built a $100 billion factory. But can you imagine there are people saying, I want to protect the bats in these trees rather than employing 40,000 construction workers and 25,000 Americans to drive the proper growth of America and build semiconductors in America. It's an illogical set of thoughts by the Democrats. It's just illogical. It's contrary to the interests of the people of America in exchange for anybody else. And I think that's what the Trump administration is here to address, that we want to put Americans first, we want to get Americans in the job, we want to build and reshore our manufacturing and be who we were meant to be, which is the greatest country on earth with the greatest economy on earth, because we have the greatest people on earth.
So I want to get into manufacturing, productivity, and your efforts to slash the government. But I think it's really important for some people to hear a little more about your background. I think a lot of the people maybe in the room are familiar with it, but not everyone watching will be. But you famously had 5 floors in the World Trade Center, and you lost 600, I think, in 58, I want to be precise, employees in 9/11, including your brother. And you built this company, and then you had to rebuild it. It's one of the great American comeback stories of the century. What leadership qualities did you learn during that time that you feel like are really applied now? Maybe you see them in President Trump. What are things that we can all take away from that?
Well, at the time, it was my company, so I had a rule where we only work with people that we like, and that was the rule. And that allowed nepotism. But the way I say it this way, we all have the same rainbow of friends. Think about your friends. The ones on this side, smart, capable winners, thinking about your friends. Now the ones on this side, make you laugh at a bar harder than anybody else, a little crazy, a little wild. We all have the same friends. Just hire the ones on this side, okay? That's the deal. So everybody hired their friends. So I had my brother, I had my best friend, I had my roommate from college's brother, my other best friend's brother-in-law, but that was true of the security guards as well. And everybody had that, and the company was a killer. It was a killer. It was winning and doing amazingly well, but located on the top 5 floors of the first trade center that was hit, North Tower, and everybody at the office got killed. 658 people, my brother Gary, my best friend, all those people who I lived. But that was true of everybody. I lost 20 sets of brothers. I think 20 sets of brothers. So we set out to rebuild the company to take care of the families of our friends. And we said we would give them 25% of our profits for 5 years. But, if you think about it, what kind of profits are there going to be from a company that just had everybody killed? We had 2,000 people around the world, lost 658, like the hub and spoke. So, but we really gave away 25% of our payroll. So everybody who joined, they agreed instead of you getting paid $200,000, you get paid $150,000. And we gave the families $50,000. And then in 2008, so we gave the families $180 million. 658 divided 180, just sent out the money. Showed them we cared about them, and we were heartbroken for their losses. And then, to end the story, so it's 2008, like how do I go on with my life when I had all these new people, like they were all new people joined. And those new people committed 25% of their pay to these families. So we took the company public. It's still public. It's called BGC. It was the founder's initials. It's worth between $4 and $5 billion. And I gave my stock to all my employees. I sold at the IPO enough to give each of them the money back. So if that person gave 50, they gave 50, and then the next year they got a raise, they gave 55, and then 60, and then 65, and 70. So that person gave $300,000 to my families and did it for us. And they were part of the crowd. I mean, it was amazing. So I gave that person $300,000 worth of stock that they sold in the IPO, so they got all their money back, and that was not the deal. And then I gave them another $300,000 that they still own. So my employees, they own 30% of the company. You know what percentage they own of the company today? I mean, I divested, but of that company, still own 30. Because who's selling that stock, right? So it's pretty amazing. So when I used to, while I was working there, when I used to say I had the best employees, I wasn't kidding. I had the best employees.
Has it been, you were the boss for a long, for decades.
40 years, yeah.
How have you shifted into being an employee, for lack of a better word?
So it's different when you work for someone else than when you're the boss, let me tell you. So I have a boss. Now, fortunately, look, if you told my wife 2 years ago that I wouldn't be a Cantor Fitzgerald, my company that I was at for 40 years, and that I ran for 30 years and owned, and that I'd work for someone else, it'd be a joke. But fortunately, I work for like the most powerful guy in the world, who is also, he is the most intuitive person you've ever met. Okay? And I don't suffer fools. All right? He just, you know, like he'll just ask me a question like, and you remember when we were talking, one day he says, what's that flag on the back of all those boats? He goes, you ever see like a cruise ship or a carrier? I've never seen an American flag. He goes, what is that flag? He just says it to me like, and I talk to him at night because I sleep 5 hours a night. He sleeps, by the way, 4. So he calls me at 12 o'clock and he says, you know what I love calling you, Aaron? Because if I call anybody else, first thing I hear is the phone banging on the floor, and then I hear, hello. He goes, when I call you at 12 o'clock, you're like, what's up? So I look up the flag. And it's the number 1 flag on all those boats is from Liberia. And the number 2 flag is Panama. And what they do is they sell these flags for like nothing. And it's a tax scam. And the whole thing is a tax scam. And so I explained to him, we talk about the tax scam. But the only reason I figured out the tax scam is he asked me, what's that flag? There's got to be something wrong with that flag. He does that all the time. He is just incredible, and his intuition, the way he feels it feels like it's right, it feels like it's wrong, and he knows his gut is right. And it's really fun. So it's basically, I sold my company. So I told my wife someday when I sell, I'll have all my money and a lot of free time. Now I have all my money and I have absolutely no time. And I just work on bigger things. And what the president says to me, he goes, Howard, you know, after this, you can't go back. You can't go back. I mean, look, I did a deal. Japan is a closed market, okay? 94% of cars in Japan are Japanese. The only American cars they drive there is they drive Chevys by the Yakuza, right? So you're a gangster if you're driving a Chevy. So how are we going to open that market? We're not. So we said, you got to pay 25% tariff. Just pay the tariff. And they're like, no, it's too expensive. We can't. So I negotiated with them, and they gave us $550 billion to invest on our joint behalf in America. This is not Toyota building a plant. That's called foreign direct investment, FDI. That's the 18 trillion. Right? That's all these factories coming, the $100 billion Micron factory, $165 billion TSMC, the Taiwan Manufacturing Semiconductor Corporation in Arizona, built like those kind of numbers, like huge factories being built. This is literally like they're our limited partner. They're giving us 550, and we're going to build power. We're going to build nuclear. We're going to build power. And not only are we going to build power for AI, we're going to build power and drive down the cost of electricity in America so that the people don't see. Is that clapping? That's nice. So that people don't see a big data center coming in and think that's negative.
Yeah.
They think, I see a big data center and I think that's positive. So we're going to build power. We're onshoring. We've done another deal with Taiwan. They're going to invest $500 billion to reshore semiconductor manufacturing to America. That coupled with the Retooled Chips Act, which is $550 billion, right? Plus the Korean deal, we're going to have $1.2 trillion of semiconductor manufacturing coming to America, right? So I'm working on $500 billion and $350 billion. And then he says to me, what are you going to do? Like go back and try to negotiate with Morgan Stanley for like a $75,000 commission on something? You're going to be like, that's too boring. He goes, so forget it. You can never go back because this is just bigger. Because all I care about, think about it. I divested of everything. All I care about is America. I just care about doing the best for America. He only cares about doing the best for America.
So I want to get into a couple specifics on the agenda, but before we do that, you mentioned AI twice, and I want to ask, because a lot of Americans are concerned about AI, that it could come for their jobs. I think a lot of them don't like the idea of this omnipresent big tech showing up in their town with a new data center. What is the facts? What's the reality? What do you say to those types of Americans?
All right, so Barack Hussein Obama, as my president likes to say, got rid of shop class in America. His objective was send everybody to a liberal arts college to get a marketing degree, okay? And what happened is they went to that college, they got the marketing degree, they graduated with a $200,000 loan. And how's this working for them? What job are they going to get that's going to cover their $200,000 loan? Where's that American dream, right? And what it did was it broke people's spirit. Because when I grew up, I had shop class, and there were kids who liked to work with their hands. And like one of my friends from high school, he runs the largest, landscaping business in where I grew up, right? That's who he was. It was always going to be that way. So we got to get back to that. There are just under 7 million able-bodied Americans sitting on the sidelines, not working in our economy because the jobs aren't there that they want. Now, we're going to do the world's biggest training exercise to train them to be robotics technicians, to do HVAC technicians. So I went out to Arizona where we broke ground again on I think it was a $60 billion plant. I gotta do, at least when I shovel the ground, it's like real money, And they were opening one of the fabs to make semiconductors in America. When we walked in the door, there were none in America, none. And all made in Taiwan, 81 miles from China and 9,000 miles from us. Yeah, that's a genius move. There's genius for you. And we need chips to run everything, our phones, our PCs, drones, missiles, planes, and we don't make them here, dumbass. So we need to make them here. And our objective is to leave with 40% market share, which would be $1.2 trillion of investment now, right? And I meet some guy. He's got, like those, the earring where you could stick your pinky through the hole in the guy's ear, right? And he's tatted up the wazoo. And I sit down with the guy, just for 5 minutes, and he was coming out of the clean room. And I said, "What's your job?" He said, "I play Tetris all day." I said, "Really? What do you do?" He goes, No. He goes, "I'm a pipe fitter." He goes, "And I've got this much space to do this, and I have to get this through this and this through." He goes, "I got the greatest job." And I go, "How much do you make?" He goes, $1.25. He goes, "I started at 75 and $1.25. I go, "Where can you get to?" He goes, "Like 200. It's and he loved his job, right? And that's an HVAC technician. He's not putting air conditioning in your house. Okay, this is doing the highest tech clean room, right? They need to cool that equipment, and water matters, and HVAC matters, right? And all these jobs, robotics technicians, they matter, right? And these jobs are coming, and these jobs start at 75, 80 grand and go up from there. And we're going to get those people off the couch into the workforce, and they're going to be happy. And it's going to be the new world of production, right? This is advanced manufacturing in America. See, we couldn't do this 10 years ago. We couldn't bring manufacturing here because, the iPhone's got, they have one factory in China where there's 200,000 19-year-olds working. You say, well, 19-year-olds? Oh, their eyesight is really good. And they screw in this little screw thing, right? So we can't do that, right? We just don't have the million people who are going to work in that kind of factory. But that's going to be automated. That's going to be robotics. And I need 25,000 people to work in that factory. Sure, I don't need 200,000. I need 25,000. But those 25,000, that's an American job. So the world is coming to us. And the president understands the world is coming to us. And he's built the world's biggest catcher's mitt to bring it here. And that's 18 trillion, right? That's I mean, you got OpenAI, you got Meta, you got Google. Apple, they've each announced $600 billion or more. That's $2.5 trillion on the first four numbers I just laid out. So people say, oh, he's not going to do that much. Oh, baloney. The scale of what we are building in America is awesome. The growth is going to be awesome. The jobs are going to be awesome. And the separation of American growth from the rest of the world, right? I go around the world and I say, just watch us. Copy us. Don't do it the old way. Don't fine our tech companies. Don't regulate our tech companies. Embrace them. Show them love and affection. And you know what you'll get in return? You'll get a $50 billion investment instead of 5.
How comprehensive can our reshoring be? You've talked a lot about high-tech reshoring, but I tried to buy a music stand for my daughter, and they all come from China. We used to be amazing furniture manufacturers in this country. We've lost a lot of things, not just tech. Do you think we can bring some of that back? Maybe, yeah, as you said, there's probably a lot of high-tech ways to do these things. So how broad do you see the reshoring agenda?
So the opportunity is that manufacturing is being automated. And automated manufacturing is perfect for America, right? We don't have 1 billion people, right? So we're going to think we need to be a higher tech kind of thought so that we can work the way this is working. So this is coming to us. I think there are some things that should be made overseas. Sandals, cheap t-shirts. We're cool with that. Well, let's be clear, we're cool with that being made overseas, okay? But, you can do enormous amount of manufacturing domestically. Once you think about what is possible now with computer-based and advanced-based robotics manufacturing. And people say, oh, robots. The humanoid robots that will probably work in your house someday, that's a different thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about, close your eyes and just think of a modern auto plant, with the arm that goes out and drills. That's the kind of robotics, right? It's robotic arms doing stuff. The concept of robots and humanoid robots, we're not going to let Chinese humanoid robots into this country. Just like we're not going to let Chinese electric vehicles into this country. You got to realize, if you take a Chinese battery powered car, they can just turn it off.
Right.
They all have a call daddy button, right? And a call daddy button means you turn it off. So if you're buying solar panels, and we have a conflict with China and they just turn off your solar field and you don't have power, that sucks. So, people need to think through if you could potentially be adversarial. We need to make our pharmaceuticals here. Before I took this job, if you opened my medicine cabinet, I don't think I had a branded pharmaceutical, right? Because everybody says, okay, this is the generic version of this and the generic version of that. All those generic versions, they're all made in China. If we were adversarial, what makes you think you're getting them, number one? And if you got them, what makes you think during your adversarial moment you're willing to take this pill? Right. Here you go. You say, no thanks. So we need to make that here. And that means you have to go down all the ingredients to make sure each and every ingredient is made here. And so this is my job. My job is I go down to every line item and say, okay, where are we with this? Where are we with this? Where are we with this? Where are we on every critical mineral? I'm back in 11th grade chemistry class, just where I wanted to be. I get the periodic table out. I get the heavies and the lights. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. I took chemistry in college because all my friends wanted to be pre-med. And after the first semester, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I can't stand this stuff. So I was hoping I wouldn't have to do the elements again, but here I am, back doing, yttrium. But the answer is, these are key ingredients, and we cannot rely on an adversary to do key ingredients. And we have to have a nice mix of us and our allies doing it, but it can't be adversaries. Because the adversaries weaponize it. And they did already. You heard about this concept, magnets, right? They put magnets in cars, and it just, the average cost of a magnet in a car is $20. They sell it by the pound. It's a $55 a pound. This isn't like high tech. This is $55 a pound, $20 in a car. But it's like me giving you a really cool bookcase for Christmas, and I don't give you the Allen wrench, which costs $1 to put it together, right? So they said, well, I'm not sending you the magnets, and they make them all. It's like not sending you the key to the car. You can't run the car. So I thought that was a great advantage because woke us up and said, you got to fix that. And this administration is not, I'm doing everything we can for these 4 years. And the whole administration is working together to do everything it can over these 4 years to get all those choke points off of our neck.
So speaking of waking up, one thing that was a huge reset with your policy and the president's, as well as the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's, totally rethinking how we think of trade deficits. Is I was told my whole life trade deficits don't matter, it's totally fine. And you guys have reset us not only to care, but you have other countries paying down their tariff by trying to ameliorate that situation. Talk us about that mindset and maybe what are the next big trade deals ahead?
1985. The United States of America, all our companies take the whole thing. We own more of the rest of the world than they own of us. About 150 billion. Count stocks, debt, everything. Companies owning shares, you name it, we count it. We own more of them in 1985. Then we start running these massive trade deficits. Now, what I learned in college, like sophomore year, was I buy your cars with my printed dollars. I buy your wine with my printed dollars. And I keep buying all your good stuff with my make-believe dollars. And eventually you say, get lost, right? And you devalue my dollar. It doesn't work anymore. Then they buy our stuff, and that's how the world works. There's floating currency, and it's all fine. The problem is we're too damn smart. We invent the light bulb. We invent the transistor. We invent the GPU. We keep inventing stuff. So instead of devaluing the dollar, you know what they do? They buy us out from under us. So where are we as we enter 2025? The rest of the world owns 26 trillion more of us than we own of them. That is a rough 40 years. It's a rough 40 years. So, you know what the president says to me, he goes, you want to be mean to them? Like we're doing a trade deal, like, you know, we're talking to the Middle East countries and say, you want to be tough? I said, yeah, what do you think I should say? He said, say, you're not allowed to invest in America. Because they say, oh, we're going to invest, you know, $500 billion in America. Say, nah, we don't want it. They go, no, what's your alternative? Right? Where else are you going to put your money that's as great as our place? Answer is nowhere. So it's the greatest economy. We need to balance that. And that's what's happening. We need to reassert who we are and what we are in the world and stop letting everybody take advantage of us, everybody buy us, everybody own us. The way I say it is there's two islands. One is where all the brilliant people live and they invent everything. The other one is where everybody produces everything the geniuses invent. Then the geniuses buy it from the guy who makes it, and the guys who make it use the money to buy the other island. And sooner or later, the geniuses are the great engineer who work for them. Right? Because it just gets bought out from under you. So the president understands this, and he is on it. And he talked about this in the 80s, and nobody ever did. And he's the only one who talked about it, right? And by the way, if you thought I knew the first thing about tariffs before I worked for him, that would be false. I thought when I learned this sophomore in college was, I don't know, sounded fine to me. And he showed me otherwise, and then like the boat, then I did the most reading, the most research, the most things, and then I tell him the statistic of 1985 and 2025 and all these sort of things. And
economists had predicted that we were headed for a trade war. You were going to show up at these meetings, and they were going to, I don't know, throw water in your face and raise their tariffs to infinity. That didn't happen. Instead, we got, I don't want to call it a trade surrender, that might be insulting to our trading partners, but we got them to agree that this imbalance could no longer continue. When you go to these meetings, were you surprised? And why do you think the economists got it so wrong? Why do you think our trading partners said, yeah, you guys are right, we've got to rebalance this?
I mean, we are the consumer of the world. We are the greatest consumption economy in the world. You can't live without us because we buy your stuff. If you make the stuff, we buy the stuff. If the client doesn't buy it, so you all understand, if you have one unbelievable, huge, vital, and important client, like one that's heads and shoulders above everybody else, and they get a little mad at you, that's not good. That's not good. So when the president would send them a letter, right, and saying, I'm pissed at you, the shudders in those countries would be serious because we're the buyer of all their stuff. If we close their arms, like think of the Canadian guy, he goes to China. China has a $1.2 trillion surplus going that way. You think they're going to let Canada sell them anything? Oh, of course not. They're an outward, and they all need what? They all need us to buy their stuff. They all need the greatest economy in the world to buy their stuff. So we knew, because we're the greatest customer of the world, that no one's going to fight with us. They'll have a little tussle, a little kerfluffle, I like to call it, right? But in the end, it's going to work out fine, because in the end, Canada sells us $300 billion worth of stuff as opposed to nobody else.
Right, there's
or
no
Mexico,
other market for them to go.
or nobody else, or Europe, or nobody else, or China, or nobody else. And the president, he was born with the knowledge of leverage. He probably cried, made his parents give him a cookie, beforehand, because he has that intuition. He understands the position of America and plays the cards brilliantly. And it's so much fun for me to work for him, because I get to execute and extend his ideas. I come up with, we'll never open Japan, so what can we do? Okay, let's get him to pay. How are we going to get him to pay? They'll lend us money. I'm not borrowing, he says. I'm not borrowing from Japan. What the heck would we borrow, right? And then we go through it until we end up with where we are in these deals, and it's the most fun.
So there's a few more agenda items I want a quick take on. First of all, the most favored nations drug pricing seems to be a revolutionary thing, not getting a ton of press from our friends in the fake news. Can you talk about this?
Sure. So the combination of tariffs, and we are their biggest customer. So think about it. We, generally speaking, for name brand drugs, Ozempic, Mounjaro, things like that.
The fat shot.
Yeah, the fat shot. We produce 75% of their revenues and 100% of their profits, right? Because we are the big payer. Like you said, we pay $1,000, everyone else pays $150, so they make all the money from us. So when we say we're unhappy, the drug companies have to listen. No matter how bad that is, they have to listen. So the president said, reshore it, make it here, and take a certain class of your drugs and give us MFN, right? And then you can, while you're building and reshoring here, I won't charge you a massive tariff. And that combination of me and Bobby Kennedy, with the looming shadow of the president and then the economy of the United States of America standing behind him, got done the greatest set of deals where we probably saved $100 billion a year for the American Medicaid, Medicare system, right? And we're going to get cheaper drugs to America. And they're going to be made here as well. So it's the combination of, I expect we're going to have $400 billion of onshoring of pharmaceuticals. We're going to onshore. We're going to figure out how to onshore generics as well. And these are just huge numbers. 1.2 trillion for semiconductors, 400 billion for pharmaceuticals. And these they start at the Commerce Department. And maybe no one who had this job ever understood it, but nobody who had this job really understood it in a way that could work with the president, who came back with fire right? And we got 4 years to get this done, and let me tell you, he's going to get it done.
So you're planning basically a war on waste and abuse within the government, starting at Commerce, but I think elsewhere, I think it's sort of administration.
Whole government. We're all doing it.
And I want to hear a bit about that, and also in that context, I think that there's the census is in your purview, and I heard you've got some revolutionary ideas for the census that's coming up that could involve perhaps lower federal employment for that.
Well, the first thing was, the census, the job of the census is to go to everybody's house and count everybody, 340 million people, right? And so the census, we'd hire 500,000 people, we'd train them, rent them cars, give them gas, and they'd go out and try to find people. Which department of the United States of America already has 500,000 people, already has cars, and goes to everybody's house every day? Oh, the post office. So here's the genius move. We are hiring the post office to do the census. I don't have to hire 500,000 people. I don't have to teach them where everybody lives. And they know where everybody lives. So what that does, by the way, so what happens is my department has the money. So I'm going to pay the post office to do it. The post office is going to give the postman, $30 when he gets out of the car and does this, and $50 if they do that kind of thing. And the post office is going to go from being a huge loser to break even, right? And we're doing a test on April 1st of this year for 500,000 people.
And everybody knows their local postman, so they're going to answer the door and trust them.
Imagine someone knocks on the door where, whatever, you're closed. You opening the door these days? Nah. No, we don't know who this person is. But when the postman comes up, you're like, I get it. He wants to know how many people live here. He already knows. I'm just confirming you, your wife, and your 4 kids still live here, right? Check, goodbye, leave, right? I mean, man, he could do it in 30 seconds. He knows the answer. We could do the census on Monday. We could do it again on Tuesday. We could triple check it on Wednesday. If I tell them to do it on Thursday, they tell me to F off, right? So, think about it. These are unique ideas, but they're just thinking about it the right way. And if you think about this government the right way, what do I think? I think the post office should own the last mile. We should go to everybody's house every day. But what we shouldn't do is after we collect the package, we shouldn't compete with FedEx and Amazon to try to process it and ship it to Tennessee where it goes, right? We should do a trade with them. You guys do the ship it to Tennessee stuff, and we'll do the delivery to the door. And then you have one delivery to the door for FedEx, not for big packages, they have to use their truck, but for stuff that the postman can cover. Why don't we do your stuff, you do yours? And by the way, that would save us $5 billion a year. $5 billion a year. So everything I do, I have $5 billion here, $5 billion there. I did this Intel deal where we were giving them $10 billion, and I canceled the give them $10 billion, and instead, for that same $10 billion, we got 10% equity in the company, and now it's worth $30 billion. So I make money. It's kind of fun.
Mr. Secretary, we're out of time, so I just want to close with asking you to envision the American economy 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Where are you bringing us? What do you think we look like in the long run?
In the long run, we solve our choke points. We have domestic manufacturing for a whole host of things that we should, right? We've made deals with our allies for low tariffs for what we should not, right? And we figure out what's best. We have mining deals with everyone in the world, but we enrich uranium in America, and we are the leading export. Like when I've done trade deals, I always sell at the end 50 Boeing planes. Yeah. And every time, I'm like, come on, buy Boeing planes. Okay, we'll buy Boeing planes. So the president got Salesman of the Universe from Boeing because he sold 1,000 planes, right? So what I want to do is I want the person who has my job to sell nuclear as well. That we should be the creator of nuclear, that we export nuclear, we export Boeing planes, we become a manufacturing powerhouse because technology can live here. We have to build the power, which we will do. We will have AI that will empower our employees, but the economy that is coming is going to work much better for America than it's ever going to work for our adversaries. Much better, because this is our kind of economy, right? It's not a job screwing stuff in. It's a job fixing robots. That's a different kind of mentality, right? We let our auto manufacturing go to Canada and Mexico, to Korea and Japan, and to Germany, right? We used to produce 90% of our cars domestically, then 75% of our cars domestically. When I walked in and took this job, we were down to 50% domestic manufacturing of cars. Our cars should be made here. If Mercedes wants to make a car and sell it here, make it here and sell it to us and export it from here. That model is coming. I think America's economy will be twice the size, and the separation between us and the rest of the world will be gargantuan because we are the smartest, most entrepreneurial, most innovative people. It's who we are when we're born. It's the way we go to school. It's the way our parents teach us. We are born with that American dream, right? That we could be that guy. We could be the president. We could be the tech bro. We could be this. We all feel it. Our children feel it. We drive it into our children. You could be anything. No other economy does it that way. And so I think the president has launched the plane, launched us into where we're going. And I think if we stick with these policies and this kind of thinking, the U.S. is in such a great position. I'm just proud to be associated with Donald Trump and this administration.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This is all the time we had. I wish we had more, but hopefully we can do this again one day.
Thanks. I had fun.
Thank you. That was really great.
Thank you so much. All right, next I want to bring up T1 Energy CEO Dan Barcelo and our Washington Bureau Chief Matt Boyle.
Yep. Oh, certainly. Yep. So exciting stuff there, Dan. Folks, this is Dan Barcelo, CEO of T1 Energy. They're one of our major sponsors here, and they sponsored our previous event with Vice President Vance as well, late last year. So Dan, we just heard I think the big takeaway line there from Secretary Lutnick's conversation with Alex and Carney came at the very end when he said that the vision for this economy is a manufacturing powerhouse. That's what they want to see. That's what President Trump wants. That's what Secretary Lutnick wants. You guys are a big part of that. So can you talk to us about for folks who maybe missed our previous conversation, explain again what it is that T1 is doing. You guys have a big space in the solar world, and you guys are building out a bunch of different manufacturing facilities down in Texas. So kind of explain for us how you guys fit into that vision.
Yeah. Well, is Mike? Okay. Look, Secretary Lutnick gets this. President Trump gets this. This is about bringing back jobs to America. This is about advanced manufacturing. This is a different type of manufacturing, and that's what we're doing with T1. We own and operate a 5-gigawatt plant in Texas. Mike's dead.
Yep.
5-gigawatt plant in Texas. That's 10% of the capacity for solar panels in the United States. We own that. We run that. We're employing over 1,250 people. We have a very large payroll in the South Dallas area. This is what was just spoken to about the Secretary. It's all about bringing back the manufacturing here. We don't need to make solar panels in China and import them. We can make them in America. We can make them in Texas. Another part of us is about the entire supply chain. We buy our polysilicon from Hemlock in Michigan. We will soon be buying wafers from Corning also in Michigan. And when you look at the solar chain, going from polysilicon to wafers to cells to modules, we will then be looking to complete that final step, which is solar cell, which is the most technical part of the process. The solar cell is a project which we call G2 Austin. As Secretary Lutnick mentioned, in Syracuse, old industrial sites, lots of power. We found the same site in Texas. We're in Milam County in Rockdale, Texas. That's the site of an old Alcoa plant. That plant has a lot of capacity for power, a lot of capacity for water, and we're repurposing that. It's just land now. It's nothing there. We'll soon have 1,500 high-paying automated jobs there. So this is the future of what we're trying to build. The other point I think is very important is underscoring a lot of this is how do we fuel power for AI? And how do we fuel the data centers? America needs to compete, and we build energy in a sense. I have an entire career in oil and gas where I used to drill for natural gas, drill for oil, and deliver that power in the United States, and deliver that globally. If you think of solar manufacturing, you're basically building the power, and you're building that natural gas field equivalent, but it's in a solar form. That power is critical right now. It is the fastest to market right now. It has one of the lowest costs of development, and the real important part of solar is when it's on the grid, it's zero marginal cost. Texas last week, half the grid, midday, is solar. That's zero marginal cost. So it's an incredible benefit to have this in the mix, in the power mix. Of course natural gas is important. Of course coal is important. Of course coal is important, and nuclear. But solar allows for a leveling and bringing down this cost, because we do also have to focus on the affordability of energy deployed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the big things, and I'll tell you, I have lots of conversations with people across industry, in the energy industry, in the tech industry, et cetera, that you hear from folks as they're building these data centers around the country, as we are focusing on this, artificial intelligence boom, and we heard the secretary talking about these different things, is the concerns for energy prices for average Americans. So how does solar, how does T1 fit into this equation of how to deal with being able to deal with the increased demand on our energy grids and production that we need to, you have to produce a lot more electrons, if you will, if we're going to be able to handle these data centers?
America's power grid is incredibly developed, but it's also old. When you start looking at where the price pressures are, it's much more than a fuel source, be it uranium or solar or what. It also has a lot to do with our transmission, our distribution, our grid, the design of it. What solar allows, and solar plus storage allows, is you can put this into the grid in places that there is no grid. You can start building distributed generation outside of big hubs. You can put this in different places. That distributed energy allows for power to not necessarily have an impact on local hubs, whether it's Arlington or Atlanta or Chicago or Dallas. There is an ability to bring this into much bigger areas, and the important part is we're talking about gigawatt scales. We're not talking about adding 10 megawatts here or there. We're talking about gigawatts of scale.
We saw Elon Musk talk about this at the World Economic Forum in Davos recently. He said that he envisions a world and that he wants his companies to be focused on producing 100 gigawatts a year. 100 gigawatts a year. I mean, that's an enormous amount of energy. But again, what are your thoughts on what Elon Musk had to say there?
I'm proud to be in the same sector, as that. The fact that he said 100 gigawatts over the next 18 months, that is awesome. America has about capacity of just over 50 gigawatts. China kicks our butt there. They're easily over 1,000 gigawatts of capacity. And I think what Elon's doing is great. It's grand. Some could actually say, if you look at it from the Chinese perspective, it's actually small. America should be double those size. So we're proud to be, in that industry. I think that the solar industry also, Secretary Lutnick spoke a lot about semiconductors and a lot about making chip fabs here. The other part of the solar industry, particularly the polysilicon-based solar industry, is that polysilicon is a critical component also for semiconductors. While we at T1 do not make semiconductors, just to be clear, we make solar cells and solar panels. We will make solar cells and we make solar modules now. That whole chain is critically important. We have to get polysilicon chains here. We have to get the whole chain, because it doesn't only support the solar industry, it supports the semiconductor industry too.
So one of the things that, since we last spoke at our Advance event in November, that I understand you guys have broke ground in this facility to make these things in Texas, and also I understand is not that far away. there's Samsung is making semiconductors, right? Like I think like 20 minutes away or something like that. They've got a facility there to do that. So talk to us about your guys' new facility that you guys broke ground on here. Where do things stand on that? And then also kind of about this almost futuristic corridor, if we will, that we're seeing here in Texas. That you guys, whether it's you guys, the Samsung, or the various partnerships that you mentioned that you have with Corning and Hemlock up in Michigan. So yeah.
So we're building a solar cell fab in Milam County in Rockdale. It's a site of an old Alcoa smelter. That has started construction. We expect that will be start of a production by the end of this year. That site will be 2.1 gigawatts of capacity to feed into our 5 gigawatt site in Dallas. That project's ongoing. We have broken ground, moving dirt, ordered a lot of the elements for it, and we're excited to keep that project advancing as fast as possible. The inputs to that will then come from Michigan. That will come from Corning. Corning will be selling us the wafers, so we'll be able to close that entire chain of American Poly, American Wafer, American Cell, and American Module.
Incredible stuff. So now, in addition to that, I also understand that you guys have closed a whole series of new financing too. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what the announcements are on that front?
In the fourth quarter, we issued equity and convertible securities. We did that last quarter. That was all part of the financing and the structuring for the company. We're still looking to do a financial close on the G2 project, but the market we were very well received by the market. We're excited to be able to have very strong shareholders and really appreciate what the shareholders have done for the company and sharing that vision of what we're trying to build.
So another big thing, the reason why solar, I think is, and I think what you guys are doing is important here. We see this in the winter storms that just happened, and we're just starting to come out of it here in Washington, D.C. If you go walk down the streets here in our nation's capital, you're still going to see big piles of snow everywhere. The D.C. is totally unprepared for this, by the way. If we had a mayor that was competent and running for re-election, maybe it would be a little bit different, but we don't. So the fact is that a lot of the country got hit by these winter storms. And a lot of people lost power. A lot of people, it was a big stress on our power grid. I live in Florida. I'll tell you, in North Florida, it got really cold, and a lot of people use electric heat, and so I've heard there were massive inputs onto our power grid there, like a massive tax on it, right, if you will, because people are heating their homes with more than normal. So how do you guys factor into that situation here when we see all these winter storms that are hitting around the country?
Yeah, I think the real strategy is how do we get all of the energy that we can get as fast as possible and deploy it in the areas that make the most sense, again, as fast as possible. When you looked at the storm effects, yes, natural gas played a critical role in the Texas grid, as it should, as foundational for America. However, by having natural gas, taking control there, we're also not exporting the natural gas. In some ways, the more we build storage into the grid, the battery storage, the more we build solar into the grid, it's only allowing us to export LNG. It's only allowing this export of you can call it American exceptionalism, to Secretary Lutnick's point. How do we build an ecosystem? America was not the #1 oil producer in the world. It was Saudi. America is now. America was not the #1 gas producer. That was Russia. America is now. There's no reason that China is also, the #1 solar producer now. They don't have to be. America one day can do that. And when you make the comments about what Elon Musk is doing, there's a vision. America has shown that with energy it can dominate. And I do think that with solar, this is really connecting to bringing manufacturing back. You don't have to make the solar where the oil and gas field is. You can make the solar anywhere. You can put the manufacturing plant. You need the automation, you need the robotics, you need the humans, but it's a very important part. And I think it's an important part of the mix for the grid.
It's like you read my mind about where I was going to go next with China as the question. So I literally have China written here with big stars next to it. So China, they are producing more solar than we are right now. So how do we, how do we beat them as a country? And how do you guys factor into that and kind of connect the dots, if you will, here back to what Secretary Lutnick was talking about this long-term vision for the economy that we see from the Trump administration?
Well, I think a lot of those points resonated from Secretary Lutnick in the sense that the administration has both incentives built in and disincentives from tariff perspective. Those incentives are basically saying, if you want to sell into the American market, it's going to cost you more. And that alone really creates this structure where American manufacturing can get on its feet and start. We have to do capital formation. We have to build these fabs. We have to build these facilities. That requires investor capital. That requires returns. The really important part is once this is built, the operating cost of these facilities is extremely low and extremely competitive. Texas in particular has very low natural gas prices, very good electricity prices, very low water prices, specialty gases. So once these machines are going, America can compete very effectively and hopefully one day be an exporter of these things. So I do think it's a mixture of incentives to promote that initial capital, and then it's about not letting America just be wide open for everyone to dump their stuff into it. If someone wants to do that, there should be a higher wall to allow American manufacturers to compete.
Really incredible stuff. Dan Barcelo, CEO of T1 Energy. Sir, really want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for sponsoring. All right, and folks, we're going to be joined here by Senator Tim Sheehy from the great state of Montana. So if we can welcome to the stage Senator Sheehy. Senator, great to see you. How are things?
Oh, yeah. Every day's an adventure around here.
Yes, it is. So exciting stuff. So you've been in the Senate now for, I think, a little over a year. So
worst year of my life.
Worst year.
That's after 5 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'd rather go back there.
I don't blame you, especially if you have to deal with Chuck Schumer. So the really terrible human. But seriously, like, what is the craziest thing that people wouldn't know about the U.S. Senate? Now that you've been there for a year, you have a little time to reflect on this. What's it like there? What's the thing that the average person probably doesn't know about what the U.S. Senate's like?
At the end of the day, it's just regular people who have ended up in extraordinary positions of influence, but you shut the door and it's still just normal human beings. And for the most part, even on a bipartisan basis, you shut the door, you can have a common sense discussion with folks about anything, and usually get to a point where you can have a resolution, even bipartisan, to go after something. When the doors open, the cameras turn on, that's when things oftentimes fall apart. But sometimes it endures. For example, believe it or not, I'm a strong supporter of the president and completely on board the movement, yet Elizabeth Warren and I partnered on a move to force the military and our defense contractors to reorient how we acquire our military equipment so that our warfighters actually can fix their own equipment overseas. And so there are moments of that where common sense, you can come together and get things done. But at the end of the day, most of these senators are just regular, not Chuck Schumer, of course, he's not a regular person. He's like a vampire's mummy or something. But the rest of us are normal.
So I want to talk about the defense acquisition reform stuff that you're doing, but I want to also we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's focus on look, we just did this big event here with Secretary Lutnick, and the jobs numbers that came out this morning. I mean, absolutely incredible. Way blew away expectations. So 130,000. The expectation was 55,000 or lower. And the number's even better than that, really, because government lost jobs and the private sector added more than that. So your thoughts on the jobs numbers as we're here, a little over a year into the Trump administration?
Victory, vindication, the fact that this administration and the Congress, everyone loves to beat up on Congress, but the Working Families Tax Cut Act that we passed last year avoided the largest tax increase in history and gave the admin a lot of the tools that they needed to do this great work. So Secretary Lutnick, I was just with Secretary Besson as soon as I came down here, was with Sean Duffy last night. We have an amazing cabinet that the president's put in place. And these are all the people, by the way, that Hill Democrats fiercely attacked as unqualified, unfit for office, shouldn't be in government, should be thrown in jail, et cetera, et cetera. And these people who are aggressive revisionists, who understood the mandate we were given in 2024, have shown up and they've rolled up their sleeves and they've gotten to work. And the results are speaking for themselves. And I think that those job numbers, when you look into the last 12 months of job transformation in America, it's so important to drill into what the jobs numbers actually mean. And what they mean is American businesses are investing in American jobs in America. So yes, there's been employment decrease because we've shifted from a public sector economy to a private sector economy. That shift's only a year old. It's going to continue. and reducing the size of government employment and ensuring that we are incentivizing private companies, as we were just heard from, to make investments in American jobs. And the results obviously are speaking for themselves, and that's a huge win for America.
So one of the things that we heard the Secretary say is that he said at the very end of that interview, John Carney, our economic editor, asked him, what does the economy look like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, the long-term vision? He said that the vision that the president has, the vision that the team has around him, is that they want to make America into a manufacturing powerhouse. That was his words. One of the things he also said earlier in the interview that really jumped out at me when I was watching the whole thing and taking notes here is he talked about how back during the Obama administration there was this real effort by the left, by the Democrats, to undercut working class Americans and get people to move away from the trades. He mentioned that shop class went away in school and things like that. And what we ended up seeing was millions of able-bodied Americans not in the workforce and not doing physical work, manufacturing type stuff, trades, etc. Your thoughts on that? Again, we're a year into this, but we've seen now a lot of the top line numbers, the trade deals that have come together from around the world. There's a bunch of different, major companies we keep seeing every time we turn around. There's another announcement of a new manufacturing place being built in somewhere. New deals that the president's pulling together. Are we going to become that manufacturing powerhouse that Secretary Lutnick talked about?
It's more than just manufacturing. It is the hollowing out of the American man. And what's happened is, over the last 40 years, our society has told young American men specifically, if you don't go to college, you're a failure. The only path to success in life is comfortable shoes, a fleece vest, work in a cubicle, and have a white-collar job. Anything short of that, you are a failure or you're worth less in the eyes of society. And that narrative that we heard during the Obama administration, remember when he stood up and said, these jobs are never coming back, they're gone, forget about it. And as we've really taken a generation and treated them like cattle, we put them into the herding chutes, if any of you ever ranchers or work cattle, and we force them down, hey, go to college. No matter how much debt you have to take out, no matter what it does to your parents' finances or how it mortgages your own future to be able to own a home and have children, do whatever it takes to get that degree. Gender studies, basket weaving, European salamander studies, whatever it is, get a degree in anything, no matter how esoteric, because that's the most important thing. And what we've done is we've dishonored the professions that built this nation. We've dishonored the professions that power our economy. And those professions are the welders, the pipe fitters, the carpenters, the electricians, the pilots, the mechanics, the diesel mechanics that we can't find anymore. These trades that involve working with your hands. And for the most part, a lot of these jobs, you can get paid six figures within 3 or 4 years with no student debt, and you can own your own home and have true freedom, financial independence by your mid-20s, own a home, start a family. And we've encouraged and really forced 2 generations, 3 generations of young American men back to back to follow that path. And that's led to a hollowing out of the middle class. It's led to companies recognizing that workforce has left the building to do one of 2 things. Either move their operations overseas, because we've incentivized them to do that with our tax policies, with our fiscal policies. And in replacement of those young American men, we're going to bring in cheap migrant labor, illegally if necessary, to fill those roles here. And we've seen a depression of wages, an upward transfer of wealth, and an outward transfer of investment for infrastructure. And all those chickens have come home to roost these past few years. And COVID was a wake-up call that the fragile, brittle economic system we'd built, that advantaged a very small class of the economy, was crumbling. So what this administration doing is they're doing more than just investing in manufacturing. Yes, they are. They're doing more than investing in U.S. industrial base. Yes, they are. They're doing more than reviving some rural communities, which, yes, they are. The most important thing they're doing, from military recruitment with Pete Hegseth to welders and pipe fitters, is they're reinvigorating the American man and saying, listen, like that sweaty, sunburnt job that you've worked, that we've told you for so many years, avoid that. Don't dig ditches, don't pour concrete, do whatever you can to avoid that manual work. We're realizing, you know what, not only was that work what we needed, it's what we wanted too. I mean, this youth male crisis we hear about, male suicide, men are depressed, women are going nuts in the workforce, and men are being left behind, and we have these Single guys who can't get married because women don't want to hang out with them. They never leave their parents' basement and they're depressed. Well, part of it is because we've pushed them into that position by empowering them. Like, we were born with big, strong backs and strong arms, not to drink kale smoothies, but to swing hammers and to dig coal and to build buildings. That's what we're meant to do, and we should be proud of that. And this administration is focusing on that. And it's not toxic masculinity. It's good masculinity. It's the masculinity that liberated Europe in World War II, that fought the fascists, beat the Nazis, freed the slaves. Like, we should be proud of the strong American man. And it's not sexist to be that. It's the common sense pursuit that we're reinvesting in this generation of Americans.
Okay, so I know you've got a number of major legislative priorities I want to go into detail about. You mentioned the defense acquisition reform. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Where does that stand? What is the goal? What is the objective? Are you working with the administration on it? Give us kind of the overview about what you're trying to do there.
It's one of the rare pieces of bipartisan cooperation we have going on right now. As you know, I mean, Chuck Schumer, this Senate, has basically done everything they can to they've turned the Senate into an obstructionist tool. I mean, remember back when they were saying the filibuster was racist, and, slowing things down with the minority in the Senate was akin to us Jim Crowing, the Obama and the Biden governments. Well, now they have taken that and they've turned that dial to, 15.
It's pretty amazing that they're using a tool that they spent years calling racist.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
and they're using it in the far more weaponized form than every single nominee has been. I mean, typically, 97% of nominees go through and voice vote. Okay, well, we got to talk to the SecDef and Secretary of Treasury, the top 8 to 10. Okay, and then we'll let the rest slide. I mean, they have fought every single. They've forced us to go through cloture votes, committee hearings, committee votes for everything down to the deputy post office director for North Platte, Nebraska. It's ridiculous. We're going everywhere on these. So they've attempted to inhibit everything this administration wanted to do, and we've blown through those roadblocks pretty successfully. So defense acquisition reform specifically, though, is one of the areas where we actually have bipartisan support, and the admin's supporting as well. And essentially, Democrats typically have been the party of less defense spending, and of course, until Ukraine got invaded, when Americans were at war for 20 years, they didn't seem to care about resources in the military. Once Ukrainians were fighting, all of a sudden they cared. But whatever took them to get there, they got there, and we are now aligned that we need to rebuild our Navy, we need to modernize and grow our Air Force, and we need to get our recruiting numbers back up. So one of the issues, though, as we hear about our industrial base, where it's most acute, is our aerospace and defense capabilities. We have the most exquisite gear in the world. We have the best air dominance fighters, we have the best ships, best submarines, and all that. The problem is our Pentagon acquisition processes have focused on processes over outcomes for too long, and we have not prioritized quantity. We've always prioritized quality. Quality is great, but if we have one A-plus fighter jet and the enemy has 100 B-minus fighter jets, eventually the 100 will overwhelm the one. And we've focused, and those ratios are not out of whack. China builds ships 230 times faster than we do. Not 230%, 230x. So for every one ship we build, they build 230. By the way, our Navy's about 230 ships. That's how big. So they can build an entire Navy in a year of our Navy. They're not as good, but that quantity does matter, especially when we have to send our ships 7,000 miles around the world to project force into the AO that they're going to try to deny us from. So what we're trying to do is shift to reduce the bureaucratic processes, take the acquisition risk that we shifted bureaucratic risk for acquisition, and we've now transferred it to the warfighters. And a lot of people are upset about my efforts here because the people who are process-oriented at the Pentagon say we've spent years building these processes, you're screwing it up. A lot of the defense industry doesn't like it because they say, listen, we built our businesses around these assumptions, you're changing it. And I say, listen, I get all that, but I have one obligation, and that's that 19-year-old Lance Corporal who lands on a beach in some island in the Western Pacific. My wife is a Marine, I was a SEAL. My obligation is to that 19-year-old kid who, when he calls in for air support, he better get it. And when we say, oh, sorry, we're out of planes, we're out of bullets, we're out of bombs, that's unacceptable to me. So I hope another big war doesn't come. We're going to do everything we can to avoid it, but history says otherwise at some point in the relatively near future. We may be facing off against, right now, is the greatest military power in the world as far as quantity, and that's China, and we got to be ready.
So now, one of the things we heard from Secretary Lutnick here was he talked about, and Alex and John asked him about his history with Cantor Fitzgerald, and that was one of the companies that was really badly hurt on 9/11. Obviously, he lost hundreds of people that he worked with during that time frame. You obviously served in the War on Terror. One of the major pieces of legislation that you are working through and moving through the U.S. Senate right now, and I think they just moved it through the Foreign Affairs Committee, is no tax dollars for terrorists. Talk to us about this, because I think that it's kind of shocking that our tax dollars are going to the Taliban.
I was going to say, for many reasons, thank God for Elon Musk. Not only has he saved our space program, but his efforts at DOGE revealed a level of grift, theft, fraud, incompetence that was going on in our own government that I think, even the most hardcore deep state liberals were like, holy shit, I can't believe we're doing this. And one of those things was revealing that through a complex array of NGOs, nonprofits, charity organizations, we've been funneling money directly into the pockets of terrorist groups all over the world for decades. For decades. Sometimes it was obvious, everyone saw it when Obama decides to send pallets of cash to Iran. Well, we are literally fighting Iran on the battlefield as planes are flying over, giving cash to the enemy so they can buy more rockets to shoot at. We all knew that, but what became more insidious was the complex financing network that had been built within the U.S. government to give money to terrorists who kill Americans and want to kill more Americans. And the most, of course, obvious example of that is the Taliban. Where we continue to this day to fund the Taliban under the auspices of, well, protecting women and girls. Oh, we're protecting clean drinking water. We're protecting minority rights, whatever it is. And we're going to give this money to the Taliban, and they're going to use it to protect young women in Afghanistan. So the terrorist organization that beats women to death, stones them, abuses them, literally has an entire societal religious structure built to oppress women into subhumans. We're going to give those people the money to protect women and girls. It's like giving Epstein money to protect. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? You're like, so identifying those funding streams and saying we're going to cut those off because there's no excuse for American tax dollars to be going to terrorists. And these are not small sums. These are not $5,000, $10,000 at a time. We're talking tens of hundreds of billions of dollars at times. So it's unacceptable that American tax dollars are funding groups that kill us for a living. There's no excuse for it. It's got to end tomorrow.
And I couldn't agree more, by the way. But Senator, where does that stand right now? Because I think it was
so
it
it's through the House, which obviously Tim Burchett carried it there. Great work on that side. Now we're in the Senate. The Senate, like we just discussed, has a lot more procedures and tools because the idea of the Senate from our framers, which was right, I agree with it, which ensured to give the minority rights. It's a lot harder to get things through the Senate than the House. By design, the framers, as you probably know, literally designed the upper chamber to be the cooling saucer, as George Washington called it. So the procedures between committees and floor votes and cloture and all that in the Senate are much slower. So we're fighting through those now. We've got it through foreign relations, and now we got to get to a floor vote and hopefully pass the Senate.
Okay, so now another big thing that has come out recently, and I heard you're pretty fired up about this, is that my colleague here at Breitbart, one of our senior contributors, Peter Schweitzer, who's written a number of best-selling books, came out with a book a few weeks ago called Invisible Coup, and this one's been, for the last several weeks now, the #1 New York Times bestseller. In it, he details how both the Chinese government and the Mexican government, among others out there, but those are two of the worst offenders, have been literally weaponizing weaknesses in our immigration system, particularly birthright citizenship, and in the case of the Mexican government, using consulates in this country to basically hurt us and advance their interests inside our country. I don't know if you've had any thoughts on those things, about the birthright citizenship in particular, and what we've seen through the Chinese surrogacy and so on and so forth. I mean, they have like entire systematic programs by which they're doing this, and it's all exposed in this thing. It's really explosive stuff. I mean, your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, how much time we got? Yeah.
much as you-
I could talk for hours on this topic. But listen, I'll start out by saying I am pro-immigration. I'm pro-legal immigration. I mean, if we didn't have people, Elon Musk wouldn't be here. The president's wife wouldn't be here. Like, we want good, smart, hardworking people to come to America, build businesses, build families. That's what we're built on. Unfortunately, that system has been abused on both sides of the coin by people using the system as well as folks in our government to try to transform things in favor of their own priorities. So I think it's very important that we as the Republican Party and as our movement, we do not let the narrative run away from us, which of course they always do, which is we're these racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant people. Absolutely not. The president's married to an immigrant. You know, his biggest financial supporter is an immigrant. Like, that's a completely false narrative. We support people who want to come here, share our values, and help us build this great country to be even greater. What we don't support is bad guys coming here, stealing our money, opening leering centers that costs us $30 million a year, opening fake daycares, and actively acting as agents of foreign powers, which is exactly what's going on. So to your point specifically, the birthright citizenship. And this, again, is a narrative that we need to stay closely on top of and make sure our messaging is on point, because what the narrative is running with in the media, of course, the WAPO, mainstream, all that, even my hometown Montana media, when I signed on to the amicus brief, is saying he wants to end birthright citizenship. Now, that headline is meant to invoke, and most Americans who don't understand, they're not dumb, they just haven't spent the time reading every case law aspect going back to the Constitution on this, that most Americans have been taught to think the Founding Fathers wrote in the Constitution, the first draft, if you're born in America, you're an American citizen, underline, underline, box, star, star. Right. No, it's not in there. It didn't enter, the 14th Amendment wasn't passed till 1868. And that question that led to the passage, when you go all the way through the Federalist Papers and much of our documents through our first century, was a hotly contested item to decide who makes a citizen and who doesn't. It was never a blanket, if you show up here and you're born here, you're a citizen. For example, the Chinese ambassador comes to America with his wife. They have a child here. That child is not an American citizen. Was it born in the United States? Yes. The child is not an American because the second clause of that, born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That phrase gets just conveniently lopped off every time mainstream, born in the United States, look, circle that. Well, there's a whole second clause that says, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That person who's born here to two Chinese diplomats is not subject to our jurisdiction. They are subject to the jurisdiction of China, even though they were born in the United States. If that baby were to be born today, right now, at this second in Washington, D.C., they would not be a U.S. citizen. That's true of children of invading armies. That's true of, again, children of diplomats or military officers here from another country.
So should we treat the people that are doing this type of a thing like the wide-scale surrogacy similarly?
What we have to do is apply the second clause, which is just being born here is not enough. You also have to be subject to the jurisdiction. And what does that mean? That means you need to be part of a legally naturalized family here. Now, that could be subject to debate, and it will be in the Supreme Court and case law. And to be quite honest, I'm open to interpretation and negotiation there with, hey, if the two parents here are here on legal student visas and they have a baby, does that count? They're here on worker visas. They have green cards. They're legal status. They have a baby. Does that count as American citizen? Probably it does, and probably it should. If these parents walk across the southern border in Yuma, they've been in the country for 30 minutes, they have a baby in the Yuma emergency room, and they're both illegal immigrants, is that child an American citizen subject to our jurisdiction? I would say no, because they are not here legally, and that child doesn't have ties to the U.S., is not subject to our nation. So what we've done is we've let the first clause of that 14th Amendment run both the legal gamut as well as the narrative gamut for too long. We've got to welcome in a second clause because, as you alluded to, we have foreign actors who are actively abusing this at scale. There's about 1.5 million, potentially, but could be up to 2 to 3 million, Chinese U.S. citizens here. Now, China doesn't recognize dual citizenship in their country, but they kind of look the other way when they say, listen, we'd like to have 1 million voters in America, because as a citizen you can vote. And
by the way, that could swing an election. I mean,
2016 was 80,000 votes. Yeah. And not only can it swing a presidential election, you put those votes in the right spot. Some of these congressional seats were decided by 8 votes. You could flip dozens of congressional seats, scores of them. You could flip Senate races, governor races, presidential races. You can literally change the electoral outcome. If you don't believe me, look exactly what China did in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was the agreement when Hong Kong was given back by the British was this will be a separate self-rule, self-governing, democratic city-state essentially, and China would respect that. What China did was flood it over time with mainland Chinese nationals who literally turned it into a communist government, voted the old government out and took it over. So this has been used many times in history. It's said Mexico's doing the same thing, whether it's the narco states who are co-opting the Mexican government, or was the Mexican government directly, I don't know. That's to be discovered, but there's no question that there's been efforts by foreign nations to impact. I mean, the Democrats would lose their mind when
Well, in
Russia
the case of Mexico, it's that they have 50-something consulates
53.
operating in the United States, and I mean, like even major powers and some of our oldest allies and friends, like the British or the French or the in the case of China, I mean, they've only got a handful, right? Like, and so
Yeah, I mean, UK's got 8, China has 7 or 8.
Should we close some of these Mexican consulates, or like?
I mean, I think we need to be willing to take stricter action to say, listen, your consulate's here to process visas, print passports, and provide constituent services. It's not here to act as a foreign power projection point to fund street protests, coordinate demonstrations against our government and our interests.
Okay, so Senator, the last thing I want to ask you about, and I know this is an issue near and dear to your heart, you're working on this very closely, and you've worked on this before you were elected to the Senate too, is wildfires. Our federal government response to these is not very great. Talk to us about wildfires. Walk us through your history with it. Again, what do we need to do to reform how we handle this?
Well, I think, my first week in office, I spent 10 years after I was in the military fighting wildfires. I had the largest aerial firefighting fleet, privately contracted for fixed wing in America. So I was a water bomber pilot, would fly through the fires, fly over the fires, and literally drop water on them. That was my business. That was my job. And so got to understand the construct over how we responded to wildfires. And again, I could talk. I was on the Sean Ryan podcast last year. If you want to hear a deep dive on this subject, you can look at that. But suffice to say that, as you pointed out, our federal, state, and county response apparatus to wildfires is woefully inadequate. And LA was a symbol of that. Lahaina in Hawaii burned down a couple years prior to that. We've had repeated crises, red and blue states alike, where we literally will lose entire towns and cities to wildfire, and people say, how can this happen? Well, it doesn't have to happen. We can be better prepared with better prescribed burning and defense mechanisms ahead of time, better response mechanisms after the fire, and just an actual focus on suppression. So we've started the National Wildland Fire Service. That opened for business this week. That'll be a coordinated national effort, because right now it's not a singular organization. It is very federated. It's kind of a pickup basketball game every time a fire happens of who's responsible and how they're going to manage it. So the president, of course, is prone to action. And this has effects beyond just wildfire. When you talk about housing, and obviously that's a core part of our economy, there's really the 4 I's. And we hear a lot about the first 2 I's, which is interest rates and inflation. We don't hear a lot about the second 2 I's, which is immigration. You have 20 to 30 million people enter this country rapidly over a short period of time. That puts a pressure on housing supply. And insurance. Right now, the fastest growing cost of owning a home is insurance premiums, especially in high-risk areas in the country. Some people's insurance premiums are greater than their mortgage every year. That makes living in that home unaffordable. So having a focused national response plan and preventative measures around wildfire will help bring those insurance premiums down, and that'll be the single biggest impact on housing affordability in this nation, and this administration is focused on it. And if we stay focused on it, we'll start to bring down those insurance rates, because those adjusters can adjust the insurance risk based on our ability to respond to these fires better.
All right, Senator Tim Sheehy, sir, really want to thank you for taking the time to join us here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Senator.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. All right, thanks, everyone.